Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Hey, beautiful. Give me a kiss. No, I mean with your other head. Hang on. The phone is buzzing. Hello? Hello?
Oh,
hello?
Tim?
No, this is David.
Where's Tim? The show's starting and we can't find him.
Well,
I have no idea.
I'm in the middle of an intergalactic booty call. Don't be a...
I'm not trying to be a spot blocker, Tim, but, well, you know, romance and aliens, that just happens to be the subject of tonight's show. Why don't you go, bring your alien baby mama with you, and we'll start.
What do you say, honey? Want to get famous on the radio? Fantastic. She's teleporting us to the studio of KCOR Radio right now. Hey, Tim, how are you out there in Jasper, Indiana? I got me a real honey here.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to meet her, Tim. And I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful night, and I'm ready to go with tonight's program.
Well, we've got some really far-out guests tonight. You know, we're going to be talking about sex and saucers. Certainly one of my favorite subjects. You know, now, I'm a kind of a skeptical person at heart. I remember, Tim, being on a panel in a program in Minneapolis, I think it was, many years ago. And on the panel was Bud Hopkins, and he had brought on 2 or 3 elderly ladies. Well, elderly, they were certainly older than I was. And they all told their story about having sex with aliens. And one of them, I remember, told the audience, who were kind of squirming in their seats, that she had had sex with a reptilian. Now, I'm not a prude. I'm not certainly easily offended. I mean, some people know my background and know it can be rather tantalizing at times. I've worked in the adult industry. I don't make a secret of that. People try to expose me, and I point them in the direction of one of my movies, so that people have to pay to see it. So I should make a buck on it. Anyway, I was just kind of shell shocked by the fact that this lady would claim to have sex with a reptilian, because I don't think that that's possible. You can't have sex with a snake. Although I guess didn't somebody do that in the Bible?
I don't know if they actually had sex. You're talking about the Garden of Eden serpent?
Well, I don't know. I thought there's some other stories in there too, you know. But whatever.
Well, I start saying. I mean, you know, you go back into Babylonian mythology and places like that, or like a Greek mythology. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of different creatures and demigods all enjoying a little bit of the interspecies hanky panky.
Well, interspecies. See, I have to draw the line in the sand somewhere. And anyway, my point is that I was so taken aback by this woman's, what I thought was crazy story, that I got up and I walked off the panel.
Wow.
And I've never done that before. I mean, I've sat through many a panel discussion, even if I disagreed with all of the guests that were on the stage with me. But I just thought that this was so far-fetched. But anyway, I've learned my lesson, at least to some degree. Although I still don't believe in sex with reptilians. Maybe it's just not my thing. I guess I like a smooth shaven space girl, not someone with not someone with scales. I mean that's kind of. Uh, and I do believe that they're smooth shaven, from what I can recall from reading some of the earlier accounts, like Antonia Boas there in South America. Anyway, let's not dilly dally in the extraterrestrial bordello here. Tim, why don't you tell us who we're going to be chatting with this evening in the KCOR Radio Living Room?
Well, I'll be more than happy to, Tim. We got two excellent guests tonight. First of all, we have David Huggins. Now, David is from Hoboken, New Jersey, and claims to have had a lifetime of encounters with otherworldly beings, including an interspecies romance with an extraterrestrial woman, and he chronicled it all in surreal impressionistic paintings. Now, Huggins studied at the Art Students League in New York City, but is mostly self-taught. Now, David spends most of his artistic talent chronicling his bizarre experiences in over 100 paintings. And there's been a documentary film made about David's experiences and his artwork called Love and Saucers, The Far Out World of David Huggins. And that was directed by Brad Abrahams and is available on Amazon, Google Play, iTunes, and other media platforms. Now, with us tonight is I think one of our favorite people to have on when it comes to these kinds of stories, and that's Adam Gorightly. Now, for over 2 decades, Adam Gorightly's articles have appeared in nearly every zine, underground magazine, countercultural publication, and conspiratorial websites imaginable, bringing a mischievous sense of prankster Discordianism to the zany world of fringe culture, leaping buildings at a single bound. Gorightly's readers are plunged into alternative universes which forever alter their view of reality. And I should add that Adam, along with Greg Bishop, has a book that should be coming out soon. I can't wait to read it, called A is for Adamski. So, David, Adam, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Yeah, gentlemen, thanks for joining us around the extraterrestrial campfire here. This is an intriguing subject, and it's certainly one that fascinates a lot of people. And over the years, it's gotten quite a bit of attention. Now, Adam, I think we should kind of maybe swing over your way. When did you first learn about sex and the saucers? Did you think it was the silly season, or did you give credence to the idea that euphonauts might be performing a little bit of the dirty deed with Earthlings?
Well, yeah, anybody who's looked into ufology comes across numerous reports. Even you were talking about going back through history, and in the Bible, you had, in the Old Testament, it says the sons of God came unto the daughters of man, and in recent year, that's been interpreted as this intercourse between angels and humans resulted in this hybrid race, the Nephilim. That's one.
I guess the women enjoyed the companions of these giants.
They were angels. They were magical people, of course. And so, it's been a fascination with mine. I wrote an article a few years ago, and they just recently reposted it at the Daily Grill, called "Sex, Drugs, and UFOs," that kind of talks about the history of this, and I go through like the Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley connections, and then on to the golden age of the contactees. There was a lot of sex-related stories there of beautiful Venusian princesses, or, for instance, was her name? Elizabeth Clare claimed she had. So there was a number of them, and of course, as we moved into the more abductee period, you had
forced sex. Well, that was when the abductions came along. It became forced sex, where before, I guess, to a large degree, it was a willing sex. Now, Elizabeth Clare, right? That was she was from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And she had met now it was an Adama. She had met a very handsome soap opera looking type.
I believe his name was Aton from the planet Meton or something like that. She claimed
yes.
She claimed she went on a journey there, and never some of the 50s era contactees, they talked about sex, but they didn't get into the nitty gritty details. But she said having sex with Meton was you couldn't beat the Earth guys couldn't beat her otherworldly paramour.
Well,
but
I do believe she had a child by him as well, which kind of gives us around to the topic of David Huggins' experience with the ETs and his long lasting. At least he's got a steady. It's not like he's out there, whooping it up in the galaxy. He, as I understand it, he's got a regular honey from afar. But now, Tim, what was the first case you heard of? Was probably Antonio Boas from South America?
Yeah, well, I mean that's probably the one that got the most attention early on, and I mean he was a young farmer at the time, and I mean you talked earlier about kind of like a consensual sexual activity. Well, I mean Villas Boas was drug into a craft that landed out in the field that he was plowing. And he was forcibly.
Yeah, he was plowing.
He was plowing. Yeah, well, not willingly, not willingly at first. I mean, they stripped him down, and then they like had a sponge and sponged him down with some kind of like oily substance, and then there was like some kind of gas that was piped into the room. That he was in, he speculated that either the oil or the gas may have, maybe kind of acted as like an aphrodisiac for him, because once the woman or humanoid came in, he reacted accordingly, despite the bizarre situation. And that case, it was reported, for couple of years after it happened, but the researchers were really squeamish about talking about this case. It's at that time, humanoid.
Wasn't she kind of feline looking? I believe.
Well, she had. I think she had white hair, except that her pubic hair was bright red, and she had
I like that.
She had like an extremely pointed chin and a thin, almost lipless mouth, and I'd made growling noises rather than talking.
I think I met her at the bar last week.
But once again, with a lot of these circumstances, I mean, we have things that are humanoid in appearance, but there are some, striking dissimilarities that really stand out, which again Boas, he always speculated that they must have done something to him to get him to react the way that he did, because he said that under those kind of circumstances you think that he would have been able to
he just doesn't want to admit that he wanted to get a little hanky panky, so he's coming up with a little side story there about gas and all that. I don't know. I don't know. Well, but Adam, so back to the contactees. did any of them talk about openly having sex with their friends from the stars?
Oh yeah, well, we mentioned Elizabeth Clare, but there was quite a few of them that, once again, they didn't really get into the details. Like Orfilio Angelucci mentioned, one contact he had where he and this Venusian type princess went into another room and did their thing. And, there was a number, and you had, for instance, Howard Menger, who claimed that his wife was this reincarnation of Marla from Venusian, who he had met as a kid. So there was a lot of inferences, in
then now you always have my favorite space girl, Aura Raines.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if Truman Bethram claimed that he was doing the dirty deed with her, or
no, he never.
Or not.
He never did. He remarked on her beauty. Remember the line? She was tops in shapeliness and beauty. He says in his book, and he claimed afterwards that Aura was named in the divorce petition from his wife, that somehow she brought about the divorce because who knows, he was always talking about her or something. She got jealous. One thing I want to mention before you go to David, you're talking about reptilian sex, and a lady came to mind, Pamela Stonebrook, who you may remember.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, wasn't she on the Greg Bishop show one time? Am I right in that?
Yeah, she really came out when she was on Coast to Coast AM. This was years ago, and she was friends with John Rhodes, if you know him, the reptilian.
John Rhodes and I shared a day or two in where were we? In Arizona with the Bill Burns and the UFO hunters.
But Rhodes was, this was like in the mid 90s, and he was going on Art Bell that night, and they had a little pre-chat telephone conversation, and John, Rhodes brought up Pamela Stonebrook, that she claimed to have sex with reptilians. And when Art heard that, he went, "Oh, can we get her on tonight?" He went. And so she was on the show, and her experiences, there's kind of a interdimensional aspect to hers, so it's one of those things. But she claimed, she had some very wild and meaningful sex with reptilians.
Now, I take it they take on. I mean, do they do a little bit of shape shifting on these occasions, or is what you see what you get?
Well, kind of. When I say it was interdimensional, she was kind of into that. So if it's interdimensional, then there probably is some of that going on. The shape shifting.
Yeah. Well, I guess they got most of those reptilians would have a tongue like Gene Simmons, I would guess. I guess. Well, whatever pleases you. That's what I always
whatever
say.
Gets you through the night.
Well, and now, how about the? There's a movie that just won of the Oscar. It's about interspecies sex.
Right. The Shape of Water, which I haven't seen yet, but it sounds really cool.
Yeah. Okay, we've come a long way from the creature from the Black Lagoon. I would say. I don't think he was. Well, of course, I remember Humanoids from the Deep. They were running around the movie there from about 20 years ago or so. They were running around the center of town during the 4th of July picnic, grabbing women and running off with them. They got to watch their P's and Q's here today. They seem to think that Earth may be the red light district or something, and that they can come here. They can come here and do what they please, but that isn't the case. We have strong women today, and they're going to stand up for their inalienable rights. Ooh.
Well, but I mean, Tim. I mean, you go and you look back into the Bible, and what was it? Like Genesis, it talked about the sons of God coming to earth and finding the human women to be comely, and took many for their wives.
Well, there you go. You got to have at least 2 or 3 ETs, in your pocket. But I'm sure that our audience is chomping at the bait here, wanting to hear David Huggins tell us all about his experiences. And so when we come back from our break,
about 3 minutes.
Tim,
3 minutes before.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, when we come back from our break, you can delve Tim into his story. So let me ask you guys in all candor, if you had the opportunity, would you grab a little?
I'll let Adam start with that. Put Adam on the spot.
I'd have to be in that position, like Captain Kirk certainly had a fondness for green women, and if it was, so what were they? The names of the
was it Alturians or something like that?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, Tim in one of our movies that'll be up on Amazon soon, Skin Eating Jungle Vampires. Who were the skin eating jungle vampires? They were the Clitorians, right?
Right. That's right. From the
yeah, good one.
It's just your question.
Hey, if it was Captain Rains, sure.
There you go. Well, Tim's question, though, I mean, it's. Yeah. Well, I'm like Adam. I'd have to really seriously consider, because I think about that South American case that where the night watchman at the factory was picked up, and the extraterrestrials, or whatever you want to call them, in the UFO, he said that the women were not very attractive.
Oh,
yeah.
He said I do remember the quote. She had a hideous face.
Right.
But it's the booty that counts. Forget about the face. That's what
I saw. Obviously, this guy was a little bit more discerning than that. He wasn't going to go willingly.
After a couple of drinks at your favorite underground bar.
Underground bass bar.
There you go. That's right. Well, again, that brings into the whole Diro aspect. Where you got the underground race that would kidnap the Earth women and take them down to their caverns for a little bit of.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, not much difference there. Well, okay, it's time to go to our bottom of the hour break, and when we come back, we'll bring David Huggins into the conversation. So stay tuned. We will be right back for more Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre, with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
And welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. Now we're going to bring David Huggins into the conversation. Now, as we said earlier in the program, David is from Hoboken, New Jersey, and David says that since childhood he has experienced a series of bizarre yet benevolent encounters with extraterrestrial beings. Among them is Crescent, a beautiful alien female that over the years their relationship blossomed into an interspecies romance that included children. So, David, thanks for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
So, before we go into these encounters, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, where were you born? I've seen your paintings. Where did you learn to paint? And some of this your earlier experiences before your alleged alien encounters.
Well, I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, in 1943. My parents lived in Detroit for about a year, and then we moved to Paulding County, Georgia, which I grew up on a farm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as far as I know, is where my experiences began.
So how old were you? How old were you when these experiences started?
I think about 8 years old. Mm-hmm. If something happened earlier, I just don't remember. But I remember being 8 years old. And I was behind our barn. I was digging at the base of a tree. Then I hear somebody say, "David, behind you." I turn around, and there is this little hairy guy coming out of the woods straight toward me. I didn't know who or what it was. I thought it was like the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember screaming, scrambling back, and I raced to the barn, and I turned around, and the little hairy guy was turning around himself and was going back into the woods. Later that day, I was thinking about it, and I went back out to the barn, and I looked out at the row of trees, and a little hairy guy stepped out from behind one of the trees, and I ran away.
Mm. So now, when you say little, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say. So when you say little hairy guy, you talking about like a miniature version of a Bigfoot or something like that?
I'm thinking so. Yes, I don't know what else to call him.
Right.
I just know they had very glowing eyes. And when I saw him, I felt for an instant I was inside his eyes looking out at me. And then that stopped. And then I remember, running back toward the barn.
So now, was this guy? I mean, was this thing part of the extraterrestrial contingent that you would encounter later on in your life?
Yes, I feel so, because he was there several times when I was with the other beings.
And when did you start encountering the creatures that you have painted in your paintings?
Well, it started from when I was like 8 years old until we left the farm, which I was about maybe 10 or 11 years old.
Right.
And they didn't seem to bother me, except there was this one time when I was about 17. I was going to go down to Altoona Lake, but it was in August and it was very hot, so I figured I'd go to the woods. And so I go through the woods, and I don't know what happened actually, but I see this woman sitting under a tree. I become very aroused. She comes toward me. I pull down my pants and everything. I fall down on the ground, and she gets on top of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have my climax. Actually, it was rather painful, but it was at the same time quite ecstatic. And I'm looking at her eyes, and then I pass out. And I wake up about maybe 10 or 15 minutes later. My pants are down around my knees. I don't know what had happened. I don't remember the woman or anything. So I quickly get up, and I pull up my pants and everything, and I leave that spot. I was so scared. I didn't know what it was all about.
So now, before that, I mean, had you or anybody else in your family seen, say, like UFOs or things flying around in the sky, or were you just seeing these creatures, in the woods?
Well, I remember telling my mother and father I was seeing things. They didn't believe me. I was imagining them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time I told my mother, there's something else born. Excuse me. And she says, all right, that's it. So she gave me a whipping like you would not believe. And the next day, I'm behind our house, and there is this woman. And I go up to her, and I say, my mama and daddy don't believe me that I see you.
Mm.
I got a whipping. As soon as I said that, I knew she didn't like hearing that. Then she looked right into my eyes, and then she says, then don't tell them.
Mm.
After that, whenever I had an encounter with these beings, I never said a word.
So now, what did this woman look like?
She had black hair,
mm-hmm.
large almond-shaped eyes, a very pale face, and she wore a very dark blue cloak.
If you would have seen her on the streets, say dressed in, like just regular clothes, blue jeans, t-shirt, that sort of thing, would she have stood out?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you would have noticed her all that much.
Mm-hmm. The reason I ask that is some of the paintings that I've seen, the figures that you have painted, they have the almost like the what you would call like say like the typical gray alien type of face, very pale with large eyes, no mouth, or if there is a mouth, it's very thin and very pointed chins, yet the body is very, very human looking. I mean, is this how they looked, or is this an artistic license, so to speak?
I have no idea. I feel that that is the way they looked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why their faces weren't the same pigmentation as their bodies, but it was different.
So, after you moved, you say you moved, how old were you? Did you say when you moved from your farm in Georgia?
I was about maybe 10, 11 years old.
Okay. Now, and where were you living when you had, when you were 17 and had the experience where you were seduced in the woods?
I was living in Ackworth, Georgia.
Okay. Right. So, how long did it take you? You said that after your experience, that, when you woke up, you had no memory of what had happened. I mean, how long did it take you for this memory to come back?
Oh, God. I would say after 1987.
And was there a catalyst that made this memory, come back to you? Did something happen that you were just like, oh my God, this happened to me?
Yes, I had, I don't know what it was, but after 1987, I was feeling very distressed for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I had heard about Whitney Strieber, and there was something about Bud Hopkins. One of his books, I think it was Intruders. And I went to look for the book. Now, we had a bookstore on 8th and Washington. It's no longer there. But I went into the bookstore and I asked him if he had the book Intruders. And he said no. But I could go down the street. There was another bookstore. I could try there. So I did. But they didn't have it either. So I come walking back, and I'm passing the bookstore on A Street, and the owner of the bookstore comes out and he says, "Hey, David, I've got your book. You have my book?" "Yeah." This woman comes inside, and she gives me this book, and she says, "It's for you." And he says, that is very strange. Anyway, so I take the book, and I just start flipping through it. And I get into a chapter called Other Women, Other Men. And there is a description of a man having sex with a woman. And that was it. I mean, man, you have no idea what I went through. Image upon image upon image came flooding into my mind.
Are you saying then that you had continued experiences with these beings before 1986?
Oh yes,
that you had up until that point you had no memory of.
That's right. I didn't.
So no, and I want to ask you, about those other experiences. But did you have any then after that point, after 1986?
Oh yes, I did.
Okay, all right. That's what I just wanted to make sure. So, was this a continual then process? Say, like after the age of 17, when you had that first experience. I mean, was this a daily, monthly, type of situation, or do you remember those kind of details?
Well, not before I left Georgia.
Uh-huh.
I left Georgia when I was 19. And I had an apartment up on 87th Street. $90 a month. Can't get that anymore.
Oh, no.
And anyway, I had a part-time job working in a, it was a hardware store, Manhattan Hardware. And that day, it was during the great mass transit strike. You remember that during the 60s?
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Well, he lives in Jasper, so he wouldn't remember that.
Okay.
I never take the subway, but go ahead with the story.
Well, anyway, I was working at the hardware store, and I was putting stock on the shelves, and I turn around, and I see these two people. So I get up over, and I go over to them, and I say, "May I help you?" They don't say a word, not one word. I say it again. May I help you? Not a word. I'm kind of looking at their eyes, and then suddenly, for some reason, they quickly turned and they walked out of the store. Anyway, that evening when I left, it was raining like cats and dogs. And I thought to myself, this is going to be one wet walk. So anyway, I started walking on 72nd Street. I get to Fifth Avenue, and I hold out my thumb. And this big black car, I don't know what kind it is. Maybe it was a type of limousine. I have no idea. Stops. And this woman comes over, and she says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Ma'am, if you can help me across Central Park, I can walk the rest of the way." So I get into the car. We don't talk very much. Anyway, I get to the other side, and I says, "Ma'am, you can let me out here." And she says, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live on 87th Street. She says, "Well, I'll take you." So she takes me up to 87th Street, stops in front of the apartment building that I'm in. And I say, "Well, ma'am, thank you very much. You have saved me a very wet walk." She doesn't say anything. She just looks at me. And then she leaves. And that night, I go to bed, and I have this very, very weird dream of a woman's face. And her eyes are closed, but she is coming toward me. And that's all I remembered. And I didn't know what to think of it. But like everything, you forget. So that's what happened. I forgot it.
Hmm. So, when did you? I guess that when did these experiences get to the point where you actually considered these actually to be like a romance almost?
I don't know what to tell you, but it's like it's happened all through my life.
Uh-huh.
I have known this one woman, and her name is Cressida, or at least that's the name I gave her.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an affair.
And I mean, why do you think that she chose you?
I have no idea. I mean, that's a $64 question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, why choose any human? I mean, earlier you were talking about other humans who have had, sex with other beings.
Mm-hmm.
Why them? I mean, I don't consider myself anything special or anything like that. I mean, it happened. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that I know, Beckley and I and Adam have talked and have written about, when it comes to these kinds of experiences, because you would think that if you were dealing with, an actual extraterrestrial species from another planet, that we wouldn't be compatible. That the two parts wouldn't wouldn't match up, so to speak. And yet, not only were you sexually compatible, but it sounds like that there was an emotional element going on as well.
Yes, there was. It was really weird. How can I put this?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, in my apartment, I would hear these words, "We'll be back tonight." But as soon as it was said, I would forget it.
Mm.
And this goes on for months and months. And then one morning when I woke up, I remember hearing those words, "We'll be back tonight." But this time, I didn't forget them. You have no idea what I was going through during that day. Yes, she's real. No, it's not. It's a dream. Whatever. I didn't know what to think.
Now, David, did you ever, I mean, feel that you might be going insane, or that, I mean, this just isn't something that happens to most people. I mean, it does happen from time to time. But I mean, did you ever feel that that something was amiss here?
Yes, I did. I didn't know what to do with it. I mean, I was like conflicted, like you have no idea. And then, anyway, that evening, I'm walking up to 87th Street. Anyway, I passed a florist, and in the windows, he has these pink cyclamens. It's a beautiful flower, by the way. Pink red stems, great leafy leaves. It's just a beautiful plant. Anyway, I thought to myself, okay, if she's real, this plant is for her. If she's not, I will do a painting of it. So I went in, I bought the plant, and I took it home. Anyway, that night, I slept so well, don't remember a thing. And I get up the next morning, and I pass the bookshelf where I had, quote, put the plant, unquote. But it wasn't there. But I couldn't remember it. And not only that, I couldn't remember even going to the florist and buying it. Anyway, I get down. I didn't think too much about it after that. Excuse me. Anyway, I get dressed up and everything, and I go down to the league, and I had a part-time job there on Saturdays, working in the gallery. And so anyway, around 12:30, someone comes up to take my place so I could go for lunch. I went and I had lunch, and I'm on the first floor, and I go into the back studios, and I pass Mario C. Cooper's watercolor class, and it was filled with flowers. Wham! Oh my God! she took the flowers. That image came right back to me. I was lying in bed. I couldn't move. She's looking at the flowers. And I remember saying, those are for you. She and the insect being leave. She takes the flowers with her. And that evening, I knew that they were going to be back that night.
Okay, so
anything
now
else you want to ask?
you say insect being they travel in pairs, or?
Well, there was always the little gray guys, the woman, and the insect being. I mean, I'm not saying that he's an insect, but he does remind me of a praying mantis.
Ooh, well, that's kind of rough. Now, I don't know. I guess I'm just not into seeing giant insects. It reminds me of some science fiction movies I might have seen when I was a kid or something.
During the 50s.
Okay, now,
I mean, there was the deadly mantis. Yeah. I remember that.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But I have seen these insect-like beings, different sizes. Yeah. Sometimes larger than me and sometimes smaller than me.
Oh boy. Adam, what would you do if you saw a giant mantis?
I don't know. I would hope I'd be calm and try to communicate with it if it was from another planet.
Oh boy,
that didn't happen with me. That didn't happen with me.
I want to ask David, did you go on their spacecraft at all, or did you see any of the spacecraft? How did you know they're...
I did. Mm-hmm. There was this one time where, after I had seen the little hairy guy, I remember seeing an owl, at least I think it was an owl, in a tree right next to our window. And I'm looking at it, and I lay down, and then these little gray guys come in, and they take me out of my room, and we float up to something in the sky. While we're there, the woman, I'm with the little gray guy, and I'm looking at him, and this woman comes in, and I turn to him, and I say, "Is that your mama?" He gives me a wink of a smile. She smiles too. Anyway, she has a long, thin rod in her hand, and she comes toward me.
David, I'm going to have to ask you to hold that thought, because we are coming to our top of the hour break, and we'll ask you to continue this story when we come back with more Exploring the Bizarre. So stay tuned.
Exploring the Bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, and welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre, going into our second hour now, Tim. And when we went to our break, David was giving us a story about his encounter with, I think David said that with a woman who had pulled out did you say a glowing wand, David?
Yes, you did.
All right, why don't you go ahead and continue that story? I know everyone's can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, anyway, she took the rod and she thrust it up my nose.
Ugh.
Yeah, and she left something inside it. And I remember saying, you hurt me, you hurt me, you hurt me. And she says, look at me. So I looked at her, she says, I'll make the pain go away. So she touched my nose, and the pain went away. And anyway, when I woke up the next morning and I went for breakfast, my mother asked me, "What's wrong with my nose? You must have scratched it during the night." But I could not remember anything.
And then it was years later that the memory came back to you?
Oh, yes. Yes. After I had read Intruders by Bud Hopkins. And when I read that chapter, so many images came back you cannot believe.
Well, now Adam had asked if if there were times where that you were taken, rather than them coming to visit you, you went with them. Now you had that instance where obviously you were someplace else. I mean, do you remember being on something that obviously looked different? I mean, not a human construction, but and I always hate to use the word spaceship because I mean, that's we don't know if it's a spaceship or not, but some kind of craft.
Well, there was a craft which I had seen, which I had been inside, and then there was something else that happened. One of the memories that I remember was I was in my studio, and I was doing some work, and suddenly the wall opened up. And Crescent is there. She says, "David, the baby's dying." And I say, "Baby? What baby?" "Your baby, but it's dying." And I remember saying, "Show me my baby." At first, she wouldn't do it. On the third time, where I yelled it out, "Show me my baby," she picked the baby up, and she held it in front of her. I remember her lowering her head, and I remember saying, "No, no, no, don't hold the baby that way. Cradle the baby in your arms. Listen, I've got to come there." "No, it's not allowed." "Oh, yeah? My baby is dying? Well, watch this." I go and I lay down in my bed, and I instantly pass out. The next thing I know, I am there. Wherever there is, I have no idea. And one of the insect beings comes over to me and says, "What are you doing here?" And I would say, "My baby is dying. My baby is dying. I want to see my baby." He says, "No." When he says that, I mean, it would have been easier to move the Rock of Gibraltar than to get him to change his mind. I'm looking at him, and then
What do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm thinking that perhaps it might do some harm. I have no idea. Anyway, I bend one knee and I bend the other, and I prostrate myself in front of him, and I say, "Please let me see my baby." Now, everybody there, as far as I can tell, were rather surprised what I had done. But anyway, I got the impression I should get up and follow him, so I do. And there's the woman. She's holding the baby in her arms. And I reach over, and just as I do, like static electricity jumps from my hand to the baby. And I remember looking at the insect being and saying, "Wow, did you see that? Let me do that again." I did it again. And this time, the baby moved. The next thing I know, I'm looking at the insect being, and he says, "Follow me." So I follow him into another room. And this room is filled with babies. And I'm looking around, and I'm saying, "Whoa, whose babies are these?" He points to me. And I'm there for one reason and one reason only, to touch the babies. And that's what I did.
But you say, well, there's more than one?
Oh, yes. There were so many. I can't tell you how many there were. Wow. But there were a lot.
Well, I mean,
know
some of this is in your paintings. In fact, you're having an exhibit at Balance there in Jersey City. I was just out there last weekend. Carla put a indigo streak in my silver hair, and I was looking at some of the paintings, and they're just so mesmerizing, and I know that it just kind of sucks you right into this other. I would call it alien landscape. But you know what I wanted to now, Adam, are you familiar throughout like us any of the like the fairy lore where people disappear and apparently go and actually live with some of these elemental beings?
Yeah, I'm kind of aware of it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, now, did any of these? Okay, they disappear and are not seen for, well, Rip Van Winkle, I guess, would have been at 20 years or something like that. Although the period of time in their dimension and our dimension would be, I guess, quite different. But were there any relationships between, let's just call them elementals, between elementals and earthlings that produced offspring?
I would say, yeah, there were those tales. I can't quote them all off the top of my head, but yeah, you've heard those stories as well, where there was, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tim, I think weren't you telling me earlier today something about elves in Iceland?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, I mean, Iceland has a very rich tradition of elven lore, and in fact, there are stories, and in fact, modern stories of people who have claimed that they have had sexual relations with the elves. I mean, one woman in particular, I think now she's actually has gotten into like local politics. But I mean, she wrote an article. I mean, she probably wrote around 5 years or so ago, talking about her experiences with one elven lover in particular. But the question that you had asked Adam, there are a number of stories, traditions, myths, whatever you'd want to call them, where a lot of times say that a human will take on, say, like a dirid or a fairy or whatever you'd want to call it, lover, and will bring her back to like our world, and they'll have a child or sometimes several children, and at some point the wife will decide that she has to go back, and she will go back and take the children with her. So, I mean, you're seeing very much kind of that same scenario working out with experiences like David and others. The stories are remarkably the same. It's just that the characters have changed, so to speak.
Well, what does that lead us to believe? I mean, can we say then that these experiences are really happening on some? Is it happening on a physical level or metaphysical level, a spiritual level, or an imaginary level?
Well,
all four.
All of
That's
the
why I was kind of asking about the spaceship. Was there actually a spaceship, David?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, there was. I remember there was an incident when I was a kid where we were sitting around the kitchen table, and my grandfather said, "Anybody seen any cows or anything like that lying in the backfield?" And I say, "No, I hadn't." Anyway, I go around and I look at it, and there is this whole area which is smashed down. For some reason, I get very scared and I run away from it. But I do remember where something had landed, and I was taken over to it. But I have no idea what happened inside.
Now, did any of these things ever say to you, hey, we're from up there, we're from Alpha Centauri, or anything like that, or simply just, we're from another planet?
I have no idea. If they're from another planet, fine. If they're intergalactic, fine. If they're, I don't know, another universe or interdimensional, fine. I just don't know. Though I do kind of go toward the idea of them being interdimensional, only because of the opening of the wall.
Now, when you say
what does their world look like? I mean, outside of seeing these children and these few beings, have you ever explored their world at all?
Well, there is something about a landscape where I am passing these caves in the side of a cliff, and there are these vehicles inside. I have no idea where I'm at, but I know that the soil was very red.
And when you say vehicles, are we talking about more spaceships, or are we talking about a vehicle that can be driven across the terrain?
No, this is like an interspatial. This is like goes into space.
Uh-huh. And have they ever talked? Now, when they speak to you, do they actually speak? I mean, do you communicate in a verbal sense?
Sometimes when it's very stressful. Other times it is quite a mental telepathy, if you will. I have no idea what you would call it.
Uh-huh. Now, Adam, how would you say that David's story stacks? Pardon the expression here. Stacks up to other experiences along this line?
Well, it sounds very sincere to me. I've read some of about David's experiences before. I have the book that came out a few years ago, and I saw other things posted online over the years, and story's consistent, but you can also once again make those comparisons to fairy lore and other experiences, down through human history. And David said it himself. They said they were from other planets, but maybe it's part of an experience that's been going on our planet for a long time. Whether they are from another planet, or whether they're interdimensional, or whatever these creatures may be. Once again, it talks about all this lore, the fairy lore, or the stories about the incubi and succubi that we've
come
had
into your bedroom. Come
Yeah.
into your bedroom at night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so I would say once again, yeah, David sounds very sincere to me. Like, it comes across to me that he did experience something. Whether we know these are aliens for sure or not is another question.
well, what do you see is the reason? And Tim, you could answer this as well, of course. What is the reason that the aliens? I use that term, of course, ultra terrestrials will present these hybrid offsprings, and sometimes ask the individual that's helped in this creation experience to hold it. I mean, as if it's getting an emotional charge, or are they trying to see what what reaction the humans will have, or what do you think is behind that?
Well, you hear the explanation sometimes that the ETs have come here because their race is dying. So, that's one of the explanations of, why they're having sex with humans to produce these, alien human babies. And who knows, maybe there's some type of emotional connection they feel that needs to be made, between, paying a return visit to, the person who planted the seed.
Huh. Yeah, Tim, would you go along with that, or?
That's one idea.
Yeah, well, something that David had said earlier when the woman appeared to him and told him that the baby was dying, and he saw her holding the baby, and he said that she wasn't holding it right. So I'm just it makes me wonder. What is it that, I mean, and it's hard for me to try to verbalize this, but if these humanoids have not had this kind of experience before, are they not having children at all? I mean, here you have a female that is obviously an adult, old enough to have a child, yet the whole idea of properly taking care of and nurturing a baby is alien to them. So there must be something going on that we're not being privy to. And it's almost like, because you mention the insect types of creatures that really seem to be kind of like the brains of the outfit, so to speak, and that everybody else is doing what they say. So, I mean, are we talking about, a species that is actually controlling everybody else, but makes it look like that, that the humanoids, are in the control? And again, we've seen this, before in other scenarios.
Well, it's interesting that in David's case, he sees this. I don't know if you would say a positive light, but he sees it as a benign experience. Some of the individuals under hypnosis that Bud Hopkins, for example, worked with, and Carla Turner, talk of this as a rape experience, and of course Whitley had a rather, I guess, challenging experience with some of his contracts. I mean, we all know the jokes that have been made over the years about the anal probes and so forth. I mean, why this duality here of both a positive symbolic relationship and something that is on the fringes of being horrific?
Well, I don't know. Let's ask David, because I'm curious, David. About. I mean, do you think that the Manus type of creature was controlling the scenarios that you were experiencing?
I feel that he was controlling my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it. How can I put it? It was like all my emotion, all my senses were subdued. So it was easier for me to be around them. I mean, if they had left me the way, I am now, I would probably freak out.
So now, do you think that, say, the woman that you had relationships with, do you think that she was also under control by this mantis?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm. And why? Why do you think that?
Well, I think she has a certain amount of free will.
Right.
She didn't have to go to bed with me. And anyway, let me see. How can I put it? Oh, yeah, let me go back where I had found out about the flowers. Anyway, after I had left school, I rushed home, cleaned up the apartment, changed my clothes 3 times. First time I was in a suit and tie. The second time, it was just basically blue jeans and a shirt. The third time, it was getting very late, and so I just took off all my clothes and I laid down in bed. And what was interesting is that I'm looking around and I notice a spot on the far wall. It opens up to about maybe 6 inches, and then I feel very calm and very relaxed. But something else was occurring. There was no sound. It was like I was in a bubble. There were no street sounds, no honking of horns, nothing. Anyway, she comes over to me, and she gets on top of me, and we have sex. And that was basically it.
And could you tell that she was enjoying this as well? I mean, not just, of course, physically, but emotionally as well.
Later, I think that happened.
Mm-hmm.
There was an instant where she seems to be enjoying being with me, and then she laid down on top of me, and I felt very claustrophobic.
All right,
and
let me hold you there because we have to go to our next break, and we'll continue David's story when we are back from Exploring the Bizarre.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz. Tonight, our guests David Huggins and Adam Gorightly. And David, I got a text from a friend who's listening in on the program, and she wanted me to ask you and of course, you have to base this, on what you can remember when you were having sex with this woman. Did she respond like a human woman would respond? I mean, just like the whole physical aspect.
Not at first,
mm-hmm.
but it was a gradual thing. And then I came to a time where she really enjoyed being with me. And I remember after we had finished, she had laid down onto me, and, I felt rather claustrophobic. And then there was this purring sound, which was very nice, and I relaxed. But it was quite nice.
So for her, it was almost I suppose, really like anybody, she had to learn herself how to relax and enjoy herself.
You have a point. I feel you're right there. I mean, when it began with me, I felt it was very superficial and very sterilized. But as it went on and on and on, there was something else, and she just enjoyed being with me.
And that's why I had asked, earlier, if you think that this was, like your first experiences with her. I mean, it was very clinical. This was her task. She had to do this, to get pregnant or whatever. And then eventually, I mean, it wasn't so much, even though she still had to do it, it wasn't clinical anymore. She was actually enjoying herself.
Yes, you have it quite right. I mean, there was a very, very nice time. There was one time where, I was going to try to teach her to dance. Like a waltz, like the 1-2 step.
Mm-hmm.
What I found out is that her feet never left the ground. But she seemed to enjoy it. And anyway, we wound up near the opening, and I'm looking at it. She doesn't say anything, but it was entirely up to me if I wanted to go inside or not. Anyway, I went inside, and it was very bright. It wasn't into the next building. It was someplace else. I have no how they do it. I have no idea. But I was someplace else.
Now,
did they ever mention? Okay, here, a woman gives birth after 9 months of being pregnant. Is it the same length of time there? I mean, how does the pregnancy differ from what it would be here on Earth?
Well, I can't really say about that, but I do remember seeing a baby in like a tube, a plastic tube or whatever, filled with liquid. And that's all I can tell you. I just don't know. But there was an interesting experience where I am with the woman, and there were several other women there who are holding babies. Anyway, the woman takes out her breast, and for some reason, I know that she cannot give milk. Anyway, I tried to stimulate her breast by nursing on it, but it didn't happen. I just couldn't understand it. Anyway, someone comes over with a bowl of, I have no idea, some type of food, and they press it on her breast. And then I'm looking at it, and someone presses my head. And anyway, I start nursing on her breast. But I wasn't nursing on the breast as someone who was in his early 20s. It was more like a baby. It was pure instinct. Anyway, after I had done that, someone had brought one of the babies over, and they applied the food, whatever it is, and the baby began nursing. So anyway, that was it. It was like all the babies there knew how to nurse, how to take in food.
Now, would you say that the anatomy of the space woman is 100% similar to what an Earth woman's body anatomy would consist of?
I would think so. I'm not sure about that. I mean, she is different from human women. It's possible. I just don't know.
Well, how would they be different?
Well, there was an incident where I am with the women, and this woman, she has this wig on her head. I think it's a wig. Anyway, she takes it off, and she's bald-headed. I was quite taken back by that. So I really don't know what to tell you in regard to that, except the women seem to be women. That's all I can tell you.
Did anybody ever explain to you just exactly, what they were doing? Like, we've got you here because we're, creating a hybrid race or whatever.
They never did explain that to me. It's like when I'm there, I'm there for a reason. And it was like being with the women and, teaching the babies how to nurse. I was there for a reason.
How long do these sexual encounters last? Are we talking about prolonged sex or quickies?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm thinking there are times when it's quick, and there are other times when it's quite nice, quite long.
Well, I don't know. I would think it doesn't. I mean, Okay, you're having sex with this guy. Is there more than one woman that you've had, the alien woman that you've had sex with? I know you talk about the Crescent, but are there others? Maybe she's passed the word.
There have been a couple that I know of.
Yeah.
There was an incident where I don't know how to explain it really, but I remember waking up one morning and my pillow is covered with with tears, and I have no idea.
Uh-huh.
And then one night I'm with these beings, and I just get very, very sad, and I have no idea why. But I kept hearing these words: everything is fine, everything is all right, everything is fine, everything is all right. Anyway, I lay down on my bed, and I threw my left arm over my eyes, and I just started crying. And I feel like I'm floating.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I jump up and I start going, no, 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 no. Oh my God, no, 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 no. I am totally going berserk. Anyway, these two very large women grab a hold of me and force me to the floor. And I'm crying, and I was just feeling very terrible. Anyway, Crescent comes in and she says, David, what is the matter? And I say, my baby died. I was holding it, and then for some reason I got scared and I pushed it away and I fell down. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Anyway, she stands up. She's looking at the insect being. And so she bends back down and says, David, your baby didn't die. See, here's your baby. And another woman comes in through an opening. I get up. The two very large women follow me. And I go over and I kiss the baby on its forehead. And I feel so much better. Anyway, there are a few of the women who were there and says, she goes over to the insect being and says, can David stay? Yes, we'd like for him to stay. And he says, no, David has to go back. Anyway, just as he said that, the two large women take a look at me. Then they turn and they walk away.
Now, when you say large, are we talking about chubettes here, or are we talking about large in the sense of height and stature?
A stature.
Yeah,
they were very large. And anyway, they had taken one last look at me, and then they turned and left. I don't know. I just felt kind of I don't know what it was. I just felt kind of guilty. And I remember saying, excuse me, ladies. They turned around, and I can only say they took like a defensive stance. And I say, I feel I owe you a special apology. I'm so sorry about what you had to do because of my behavior. If there's anything I can do to help make for it, all you need to do is ask. And that was it.
You know, I anyway, don't think we've asked you. Have you been married?
Not at that time, no.
No. I was going to say now, when you were having these experiences and you were married or were having a relationship with an Earth person, I mean, what would they have thought about this?
Oh, God. What can I tell you? There's something wrong with you. You know, you're crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, I've had a lot of problems with that.
And well, I guess that could be a situation there. You know what, Tim and Adam, have you heard that, who Bill Chalker is? The researcher over there in Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did. Now, he did a book, and I may have the title wrong, but I believe it's called Hair of the Alien. Does that ring a bell?
That or alien DNA, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, you're pretty close to that.
Yeah, yeah, Hair of the Alien. Well, now, apparently there is an individual over there, and I don't know what his name is, who has been having or had at least one uh, experience with a space alien. And I believe there were some hairs left on him, right, from the space woman. And they sent the hair away for analysis. Do you know what might have been the outcome of that?
I have no idea. That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
Tim.
yeah.
The individual actually he had one experience where he had after he had taken his wife to work, he lay back down to take a nap in the morning, and when he woke up, there were two women at the foot of his bed. One of them looked kind of like the traditional Nordic. She had like extremely white skin and white blonde hair, and the other had somewhat Asian featured, but she looked an awful lot like the type of woman that David was talking about. And after the experience, when he got up later, he found a single hair that had been wrapped rather painfully around his junk. And
Aha, yeah, I have heard this
Yeah,
story. Yeah.
yeah, and he was smart enough actually to when he was able to get it off, to put it in a plastic bag, and
Yes.
and Bill had the DNA analyzed, and the hair actually was of a very distinctive Asian subgroup
That's
that
correct. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there was also an extremely unusual genetic counterpart to that seemed to be of like a like Swedish or some kind of
Yeah.
of ancestry. But the Asian aspect of it was of a subgroup that was extremely rare. I mean, really, I guess there's just a very small population that exists nowadays from that. So how he managed to get that, get that hair, it's still very up in the air, and just a very weird case.
Literally up in the air here in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
case. I would guess. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting case, and well, David, have you ever had any physical evidence? I mean, can you grab something from their world and bring it back?
No, I don't. I don't have any physical evidence.
Huh.
Well,
And what?
I'm,
Oh, go ahead, Tim. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to ask David. When did he decide to start painting his experiences? Because I mean, that's the very visual aspect of this whole story, are these absolutely wonderful paintings that he's done.
Well, after I had read the book Intruders, there was one night where I am with the beings, and one of the beings says, "Let David do paintings." I says, "Well, I can do that," and that's how it began. What was interesting is it took me about maybe 2 to 3 weeks before I had the courage to do my first painting. You have no idea what I was going through during that time. Anyway, I started my first painting. I worked on it from, I would say mid-afternoon until late that night. And I went to sleep, and oh man, did I have such a wonderful sleep. It's like I was facing what had happened to me.
And this is the first time that you've ever gone through that sort of emotion.
Yes, it was like a catharsis. It was allowing me to see what had happened in my life and try to get it in order.
Uh-huh. Now, are these experiences continuing, or did I hear somewhere along the line, perhaps from our mutual friend Carla, that the relationship has been permanently halted?
No, it's not permanently halted. It's just, I mean, I saw Crescent about maybe 5 or 6 months ago, so it's still going on.
It is okay, and where I mean, is there? I don't know how to put this, but is there an outcome to this? I mean, is there a master? Is there a master plan? I mean, are the hybrids going to rise up against us at some point, or do the children, do they look like our children?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they do. You could watch these children walk across the sidewalk, and you couldn't tell them the difference between being a human or a hybrid.
Uh, and how about as far as the master plan?
I know nothing about master plans. I I just don't know.
Uh,
I feel that they are interested and they are beneficial in some way,
mm.
but it's up to us to figure what it is.
All right. Well, we are closing up on the midnight hour here in New York, and I do want to go around the table, the round table, literally, since we're inside a saucer here. Adam, can you tell us a little bit about how your book on the contactees is progressing?
I muted
Yeah, yeah.
myself. It's almost
Oh,
done at
yeah.
last.
Uh-huh.
All the writing is done. All the collected all the photos. The cover is done. Right now, it's in the hands of the person doing the layout for the book. So
Wonderful.
perhaps in another month or so, just passed it off to the guy doing the layout about a week ago. So it'll take some time. There's a lot of
Yeah.
moving parts, a lot of photos, and fitting
Oh, I
those
saw.
all into the text.
I think you know what I saw for the first time. We had help me out here, Tim. We had a fellow on the show who wrote the book about Venus.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah, was it Keller?
yeah, okay, and I had seen some photographs. He sent me some. There is actually a photograph, and I don't know if you're using this in the book or not, but it's the first time I had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Along John Neville, the late talk show host, who certainly promoted the contactees more than anybody else, is speaking with a rather attractive, middle-aged or younger woman who is identified in the caption as Aura Rains.
Oh, I would like to see that. No, we don't have that
Well, I
photo.
think if I can find it, I will pass it on to you. And
Yeah.
I looked at the photograph, and I haven't met Orains personally, but
Right.
yeah, Carol, who is my assistant here, of course, she has done a rather colorful painting of Aura Rains, and she said her psychic inspiration was is that it might indeed be Aura Rains. There's
Mm-hmm.
something
Yeah.
strange. Yeah, there's something strange about some of these people who showed up at saucer festivals and conventions.
Oh, like
Like
Valiant Thor, for
well,
instance.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking of Valiant Thor. They all look like soap opera stars.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but it's like the chiseled the chin and the style and all of that.
I know what you're
Anyway,
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Adam, anyway, what else can people look forward to, and how do they find you?
Well, we've only got a minute left here, Tim. Maybe you should let our audience know where they could go to and see David's paintings there in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, in Jersey City, Balance, which is a hair salon and a spaceship a portal, and one of the most colorful places you'll ever go to, and say hello to Carla while you're there. And David, of course, can be found. The movie is out. You can find that on the internet. And don't forget to go to our YouTube channel, Mr. UFO's Secret Files.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.